Lots there for everyone attending the G7 to sink their teeth into. With his take on how it may go, I'm joined by Remi Piet. He is a research associate on the political economy at the University of Miami, joining us from South Florida. Remi, thank you very much. I want to kind of jump right into it. It's interesting to read the analysis pieces that indicate U.S. President Trump is going to be walking in to a G7 meeting more isolated than ever, and perhaps more never need of international cooperation, which he has constantly criticized. What do you make of this situation, and what do you think Trump is going to be like as he enters this?
Well, it's going to be a difficult situation for Trump, indeed. I mean, the agenda is set by the host nation, in this case France, and Macron has pushed towards an agenda on inequalities for many reasons. First of all, because today we're having 10% of the wealthiest people in developed countries own 9 times more money than the 10% of the poorest people in nations. That's the widest gap over the last 50 years. So there's an increasing inequalities in developed nations of the G7 countries, and also because Macron has faced a strong revolt from the Yellow Vest last year. So he really wanted to tackle those issues of inequalities that's fostering extreme movement, far-right movements, and a series of shortage and incapacity to develop global growth in countries and economies of the G7 country. Now, that's not something that Trump is looking forward to address, because his own policy is definitely not in terms of decreasing inequalities. It's actually much more about tax break in the US and much more about America's first, rather than to have an issue of global alliances to address issues through free trade. Also, he's going to have to walk into issues such as climate change, which is very dear to Macron's heart, at a time where the Amazons are facing wildfire they've never seen before. And obviously Donald Trump, being a climate skeptical and not being in basic science on the issue, is definitely not looking forward at facing those discussions at the G7.
That's a lot to bite off as he walks in. I want to get to the environmental aspect in just a moment, but today U.S. markets plunged in large part because of the trade war with China and Trump's contentious relationship with his own Fed chief. What do you think, how do you think this is going to play out behind closed doors in terms of the global economy?
Well, absolutely. And in the case of this G7 summit, Trump has never been more in need of finding some kind of consensus, rather than facing its own war against China without the support of his European allies and other G7 allies. We're having here around the table a series of different countries that actually believe in free trade as a way to move forward in terms of global growth. You have Germany that is suffering from a potential decrease of economic growth globally because of the lack of exports that they're usually having with economies such as the US and China. There a lot of investors have worried about this issue. You have also Great Britain with a new administration from Boris Johnson that is hoping to develop new free trade agreement. And in front of that, you have a Trump administration that is really playing on a unilateral basis of America first, not understanding the damages that it does globally in terms of global trade and growth.
Remi, I want to talk about global issues, especially the climate. Think about what is going on. The economic genders continuing tension in the Middle East, as well as growing concerns in Kashmir and the raging forest fires in the Amazon. So much at stake, and yet reports indicate President Trump has openly wondered to his staff if it's even worth his time to attend the G7. What message does that send?
Well, clearly, Trump is in the situation where on all those issues, whether you're looking at climate change, the wildfire in the Amazon, when you're looking also at the treaty with Iran and negotiation with Iran, you have a Trump administration which is absolutely isolated. In the case of Iran, all other members of the G7 actually back the existing negotiation, under the UN umbrella of trying to work out a deal with Iran that actually, follows up what he has to do in terms of nuclear agreements here, and the Trump administration is the one that actually pushed that agreement on the side. Trump has never been in favor of multilateralism. He never believed in actually working with other countries to reform the WTO, to be part of the United Nations, agencies and organizations. And in that case, obviously, the G7 is not a pleasant place to be, because his position is absolutely minority in terms of global affairs, and he's going to be facing a series of countries that will try to make the case for the fact that more multilateralism and working as a gathering of countries towards a better world on issues of climate change, trade, and security is needed, and Trump doesn't stand for this.
Quickly, I like you pointed out that the host city is really the one that sets the agenda, but what are the G7 nations going to do to, in essence, work around Trump? Because it's shown this is not the kind of meeting he likes or does well at.
Well, it's not definitely, and it's probably going to try to walk in and try to find some allies here. These traditional allies at the G7 usually has been Italy. Conte, unfortunately for Trump, actually has put his resignation as prime minister. Is still going to be present in Biarritz, but just for a couple more days in office. So his power on those summits is not going to be very important. He's probably going to try to be closer to Boris Johnson from the UK. Boris Johnson is definitely in need of having some kind of support from Trump because he's facing strong negotiations in front of Germany, in front of France, specifically on trying to work out a better deal for the UK in terms of Brexit. But here again, everybody knows around the table that it's Boris Johnson might try to support Trump in a very short term on those G7 negotiations, but it's not in the best interest of the US to work out a deal with the UK, and any kind of free trade agreement between the UK and the US will be in American favor based on this America First policy and take from the Trump administration. So right now you have a Trump administration and Donald Trump which is very much isolated on international affairs, and that's not something that Donald Trump appreciates.
Remi Piet, thank you very much. A great deal to take in the coming days. We appreciate it.
My pleasure.